with audio chit chat. Glue number 4. The easiest and pretty much the most spoken about on the internet. A bus compressor. Yep, this will add you some glue. However, it could also destroy your mix quite easily. Putting the tape and channel strips on your mix as a whole is pretty much the easiest way because you don't have to know how to use a compressor. And if you're going to put one on your mix bus, you definitely have to know what it is you're listening for, how to use it, when to be subtle, when to smash it. And this is kind of subjective. There are rules. A compressor, if you recall, has a threshold. Anything that goes above that threshold, it will reduce based on the ratio that you set. Let's say 2 to 1. 2 dB up, 1 dB down. So what you want to do, depending on the kind of style you're doing, but like when I do hardcore and some of that stuff, I don't know. Compressors on the mix bus, I don't know. They're getting smashed. So maybe if you want to just add a little to it, that's all good. It's not uncommon to do that. Techno, it's not uncommon to do that. Pretty much all kinds of music, it's common to use a bus compressor. Back in the day, like I said in another video, we didn't have a bus compressor in every single room that I worked at. If I wasn't on an SSL, 99.9999%, we wouldn't have a compressor on the mix bus because due to the analog going in, we'd already have that kind of glue. So, and I said like earlier that if I had a stereo compressor, for example, I'd probably put it in the mix as opposed to the end of the mix. You just have a finite amount of gear to use, and unlike digital where you can put this and this and this and this, imagine if you were in a studio that had only one ultra harmonizer, two pairs of Neve mic pre's. You can see how that's going, right? So less is best. So SSL is the one everybody runs to, and with good reason. It is probably the most popular on your mix bus. I mean, obviously, there's so many boutique compressors and things now that it stands on its own, but there's a lot of choices now. More so than when I was doing stuff in the 80s, because you just didn't have all the money or the gear or whatever was going on in that particular studio. So you had to take what you get and be really creative, probably more creative because you had less instead of what you guys have, which is more. So how does an analog compressor fare up with the digital compressor that you're going to use as a plugin? Okay, someone's going to slam me for this. Let's just go to the SSL bus compressor, G, E, J, whatever the hell your plugin is. I have an SSL bus compressor. And I have to say, the digital one will crap out way before the analog. Sorry, you don't like that? You don't like it. But the truth hurts sometimes. Why? Well, like I said, with analog, anything, it just pushes back. So the SSL bus compressor, the analog version, really just works. It just pops it into place. You can slam it a bit more, where the digital one might just crap out. And that's why a lot of people say be really subtle with it, because after a certain point, it's just going to be as opposed to the analog one, which will just give you even more pumping. And it will distort, and it will crap out. But I think the threshold of when it will crap out is way higher than a digital one. Am I saying go out and get an analog compressor and put it on your mix bus? That's on you. You gotta remember, what the plugin's what, $39, and the real one is almost 3,000. Is it gonna make that much of a difference? It'll make a difference. Oh, definitely. But you'll change your workflow because now everything's going through it. You cannot bounce. You have to do it all in real time. The same with a tape. You have to do everything in real time, which probably isn't going to be bad. I actually kind of like taking a track instead of bouncing it to let it go. And then sometimes you say, oh shit, that part's fucked up. Hey, there's a missing pop. Hey, that's a little offbeat. And you probably won't notice that when you do a digital bounce or render, because you're not listening to it on the way down. And then when you do a mix, you're going to be like, where did that come from? So at the end, just, use this thing subtly. Read the manual to make sure you know how to use it. Go look at examples of how people use stuff on a mix bus, especially with the SSL, and any by that matter, because each compressor sounds differently. You can have a Neve, you can have an API. There's no rules on what you pick. There are rules though on how to use a compressor. So when someone's telling you, "Oh, there's no rules," you do what you want. Yeah, you can do what you want, but you can also fuck shit up. And that's on you. You don't want to do that. And if you don't know how to use a compressor, don't put it on your mix bus. You're just going to screw shit up. Remember, you have all those analog channels. You have a tape, the process of how it works. And you put these two together and you will have that sense of glue without using a compressor. But in part of it, you'll get a real analog sound, because if you pick an SSL plugin, you put an SSL bus compressor, and then from the bus compressor it goes to tape. That is how it was done, okay? And if you're missing a bus compressor, not every console had one. And like I said, there was finite amount of gear, and if I had a stereo compressor like a Neve or something, I'd put it on drum bus. I wouldn't stick it on the end of the mix, because the tape, the analog console, mastering from tape, and that whole system was also analog, cutting and everything to get it to the final record, unless you were using direct to metal mastering. But even that is analog. You have to, it just gets rid of a process between the master and the mother that stamps the records. There's also a couple of mastering lathe thing. I think it's on Waves, where it gives you what that the lathe, which is the thing that cuts, where you do your final cutting for it become a mother, which would become part of the stamper, and then that's how it kind of works. I hope I kind of forgot the process. I shouldn't, because I pressed thousands of records. But at the end of the day, you get the idea. So you can try that on the mix bus after the tape, because technically you'd go to master it and you'd need the cutting lathe to get it to be a record. So you can see that little lathe after the tape would make sense, because in the analog world, that's how it was done. Look, I ain't pushing analog versus digital, but to understand how it used to be is important. There isn't one digital workstation that absolutely does not use this theory. Not one. If it has a mixer, it's not magic. They took it from a real console, at least the way of thinking about it. You have channels, you have distortion, you have compressors, EQs, bus compressors, reverbs, whatever you want. This was all hardware before it was digital. So don't think that because you use Cubase that this is some modern technology, because it's not. It's actually mimicked from the real world. So to understand that sense of what was being done, then yeah, you can modify the rules. You don't have to have a tape on the end. You don't have to have the lathe. You don't have to have the bus compressor. Shit, you don't even need to have all those channel strips. And you can have a bus compressor. So you could see you could combine things easy. And so there's no rules in that if you're going for a certain sound. But if everything starts to sound a little eh, take some stuff off. Don't be afraid. It's not going to bite you. So you could say, oh shit, those drums sound better without that channel strip, but these parts right here sound great with the channel strips on. So you can, mix things up a bit. You might not like all the channel strips on all the channels. You might think that the bus compressor is just maybe the wrong one, or it doesn't need it. There are definitely like these mastering kind of plugins where you can pop onto the whole entire mix that just kind of work their little magic. So you can use those and try to use it. Just try to understand the process, and then you'll make better decisions. This isn't analog versus fucking digital. I'm sorry, they are different. If you like one over the other, that is your personal choice. But remember this: nobody that listens to your music is going to know whether you used analog or digital. Not even another engineer. It's not freaking possible because they're not in the room with you. Remember, only people listen to the final result. They don't care whether you used SSL, boom, beam, beep, beep, blah, 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 summing mixer, digital in the box, Fruity Loops, whatever the hell you use, no one's going to know. Only you will. So don't be too hard on yourself when you're doing this, and don't think that you cannot achieve a good sound unless you use analog gear. Some analog equipment does work better than a plugin. I'm sorry to fucking tell you. But if you don't like that sound, then I'll be honest with you, it don't sound better. But in my ears, EQs sound great analog. Full fucking stop. But do you want to spend $2,000, $3,000 on a stereo EQ? Probably not. But if you were to try something analog, look, there's Silver Bullet, there's an SSL Fusion, there's these color boxes, if that's what you call them, that have different modules in it, and it will help your, overall mix. Maybe you could record through them and put them in. So, I don't mix analog every single time. I don't even have enough gear to do that. So sometimes I would just take a digital mix, run it through the Fusion, get a little bit of spice on it, and send it back into the computer in real time. Remember, analog, if you put an analog insert on anything you do, it has to record in real time. Or you print the track through the analog, get rid of it, and now you've imparted the analog gluey sound or EQ or whatever it is that you're physically doing. Reverbs and delays, I think, really sound much better than plugins. It just does. But also, using a digital one is bad. No, not at all. Um, it's how you're doing your thing and how everything works at the end for you. It's about the music and not all this stuff. Remember, people don't know what you use. They don't care what you use. They just want to have an enjoyable experience when they listen to your music. And that is the most important thing. These are just tools and methods to get to the end. They are not the beginning of the end all of be all. The two track, what the people listen to, is the final result. And if you think analog, whatever, will suit you, understand the workflow, understand that certain levels need to be achieved going in that thing, and then try to fit it in and see how it goes. Go look at tutorials. Mix Bus TV, he's the analog master. you will get way more information from him than you would from me, because he's the analog man. Mix Bus TV, you got it. He's the man. David rocks. I don't know him, but I do watch the show, and it's quite cool because I'm a big geeky. So just seeing all these little things makes me happy. Um, but I don't have the money to run out and get all that stuff. I don't have clients like that. I'm so needing a certain thing, but you can see all the gear he has. All right, so you got to remember, one piece of gear, one channel. One piece of gear could be two channels. If you're using a mic pre's that have four channels, but it's all mono anyway. So it can get expensive really quickly, even before you have enough gear to make a difference. See, that's the thing too, nobody's telling you about. If you got one piece of analog gear, that's not how you mix. You will go through a console and you go through multiple pieces of analog gear. And the gear he has, he's either using on an insert, he's using it on a bus, and so he's mixing live through all that gear. I can't imagine what the recalls in his room are like, but I'm sure he's got it down pat, because you don't do that shit and not have a system to be able to go back. And remember, digital, you just go save as. Oh, I like that version better. Let me finish it from here on in. That's not the thing. If you don't like the mix and he starts another mix, and then all of a sudden you have something that needs to be changed, he's got to put all that gear back together and pray that it's the same. And it'll never be really totally the same, but it's not going to be that far off if he has a great way to do it. And if he keeps consistency, like let's say he has an EQ that he uses on a snare sound, he'll probably keep that kind of the way it is, and then put something through it. It's like a preset, and then he can modify it. And then when he goes back, he'll have the same way. That's, I think, what Chris Lord-Alge does. The compressors stay exactly where they are. If he needs to change them, it's by a little boop, and then he'll put it back for the next mix. So that consistency is kind of there. But if you have a little line and you got a thing, and maybe it's not exactly, we're getting a little bit geeky there. So if you want to see analog stuff in its finest, go check out Mixbuds TV. It's really good. It's fun. And you could look at all the toys that you might not be able to afford. It's like going into a Ferrari dealership, if you ask me. Love the car, cannot afford it. But if you can, and that's something you're interested in, he can probably give you way more advice. I think you can join up on his channel and get some advice from him, and you probably get really good advice. So there you go. Glue is finished from this point on for me anyway, unless you want to get some Elmer's glue and put it all over your computer. I don't recommend that either, but these are little basic things that you can try, and you get an interesting result. And that's how you learn, right? You'll learn that you hate it, you love it. I'll use just a portion of what was said, and I will try little things. And, you don't need 50 tape decks. You don't need all this stuff. Less is best. Okay. So learn your plugins, make great music, and don't worry about it. Just don't sweat the small stuff. Just look at the bigger picture, because that's what everybody else is going to be looking at. The picture, not the guy who painted it and what colors you used. Nobody cares. Okay. All right, glue guys, there you go. I hope that helps. And subscribe, like, dislike. Tell me you love me, or tell me you don't. I like the love. Ciao for now.